Barbara and I wanted to support Shakespeare and Company, one of the premier indie bookstores in the country, if not in the world. And we really, really want you to buy your books from Shakespeare. And so as an enticement, both Barbara and I are offering special gifts. I am going to offer, I will send you if you buy any of my books, or if you pre-order With or Without You, which is coming out in paperback in June, I will send you this beautiful hand painted by one of my characters book plate, and I will send you 2 pages that never made it into the book. Barbara, why don't you tell people what you're going to give them, because I can't find my notes.
So anyone who writes, so you just by showing up, you get something. I will send you a Spotify playlist of the music in the book. You can either specify classical or country, or you can have both, and a deleted scene. Everyone gets that. And then I will pick one person to get a signed copy of my first book, Queen of the Owls, because I want you to buy the new one from Shakespeare. So I'm not going to give that away for free tonight. So everybody gets something.
That's right. And as I just put it in the chat, just send it to my business email for Barbara or for me at carleavitt@hotmail.com, so we can keep this extraordinary indie bookstore going. So I am just so thrilled to be interviewing my friend Barbara tonight. I have like so much to say and so many questions. And I just want to give you some fun facts to add to her official bio. Barbara has been a therapist, a professor, an advocate for quirky kids, and a full-time mom. She's lived in a converted jail cell, a converted sauna, a converted firehouse, and a cabin in the redwoods without heat. In her travels, she's been inside a glacier, a monastery, and a mosque. She's seen the whirling dervishes, I did too, in Turkey, the Mona Lisa, me too, the rainforest, the Venetian canals, me too, and the Egyptian Sphinx. Her debut, Queen of the Owls, is currently shortlisted for major awards. The Sound Between the Notes is her second novel, recipient of a starred Kirkus. Now, I want to start the questions by talking about that Kirkus. Every writer knows and fears Kirkus because they can be notoriously, let's just call them pesty. If they don't like your book, they don't say it in a kind way a lot of the time. And if you ever get any praise from them, it's like you break out the champagne. So tell us, Barbara, tell us about your Kirkus. Maybe you can read some of it for us. And tell us what it meant to you to get that.
Yeah, it was really like getting an A from the meanest teacher ever, because when we open our Kirkus reviews, it's like you're just trembling and hoping there might be some little phrase you could bear to make public, because they're really hard to please. So I was like knocked my socks off to get this starred review, which they say is only for books of remarkable merit. So like that was just really an amazing feeling, because it's not like, how do I say it, it's when someone is really hard to please, their thumbs up, which is again very rarely given, really means a lot. And so whoa, what is that? One of us is making. But at the same time, I want to say to my fellow authors, like we don't want to give these guys that much power. I mean, we have to retain our own center, and we know that there are readers who will love our books even if one of these big deal reviewers doesn't. So it's a funny kind of balance there, between being honored and also kind of saying like it doesn't really matter, if that makes sense.
It absolutely makes sense. I mean, I think like people have this idea that a career trajectory just goes up, 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 and it's more like a roller coaster. I mean, you never know what exactly is going to happen with a book or why. So I just want to read that, Kirkus. The climax on the night of her performance is a tour de force steeped in suspense, and Susanna's subsequent revelations are satisfying and authentic. A sensitive, astute exploration of artistic passion, family, and perseverance. You can't do better than that. I would tattoo that on my forehead if I were you.
I know yeah, it feels good.
Okay, so I always want to know what's haunting an author before they write their book. I mean, what were the personal questions that you were trying to figure out for yourself? And did you get the answer you expected?
Well, I think that would be awful if you got an answer, but the best is if you have new questions, right? So, so I think all my books, my two books, and I actually have a third one that I'm close to feeling is might be ready, are all really about the search for self. Like, who am I? Behind all those roles I play, where do I fit in this world? In this particular one, because the protagonist is adopted, like, what did I get from my biology? What did I get from the people who raised me? What did I get from the life experiences I had? What is mine? What is me? And what do I do with that? What is my, what do I want to make, as our beloved Mary Oliver says, what do you want to do with your one wild and precious life? So that is what haunts me in everything I write.
Okay, I'm going to ask Barbara to read, but before I do, I want to ask all of you out there, please ask Barbara questions. Put your questions in the chat, but don't put them in the chat until say like 5 to 7, because then I will be reading them out loud and it will be too hard for me to skim and scroll all the way back. But please ask her anything, she'd be delighted. And of
So
course you can ask me anything, but it's her spotlight. So Barbara, please can you read a little bit and please set up the reading for us.
Okay, I will. This will be short because I don't like listening to people read out loud for very long. So I'll just read from the very first page of the book. So,
okay,
the protagonist. Well, the book is told. The story is told through the perspective of a musician and is framed around music. We can talk about that a little bit later. So it opens with her audition, and it closes with, I would say, her true concert. And she's playing this piece, which is by Schubert. Schubert wrote it when he was dying. He died at 32, I think. And he wrote it when he knew he was dying. It's an incredible piece. And there's another story about that. So, okay. So I'll read you just like a page or two from the very beginning, just before her audition. And by the way, here is this like To Die For cover. I hope it's showing up. Is it blurry?
Push it's a little blurry. Push it down. Do it the way you do. There it is. There it is. It's a gorgeous cover.
I don't know. I made this. I can't do it. I made this blurred Zoom background. It's just I haven't figured it out yet. Anyway, so there's Francoise holding it up. Thank you. All right. So I'll read you just really for 3 minutes. Susanna looked at her watch. 7 minutes to go. Really, there was no reason to be so nervous. She'd done this plenty of times over the years. It was like pulling on a pair of familiar boots or diving into a pool. Muscle memory, they called it. It had been a long time since she'd sat like this, waiting on a folding chair for someone to open a studio door and beckon her inside. But her body remembered, and her emotions, they definitely remembered. 15 years, Susanna thought, since she had auditioned for something this important. The music world didn't change, even though the musician had. Auditions were rituals stylized to maximize their gravitas. She'd been to enough before she walked away to know what was on the other side of that studio door. A big windowless room where a Steinway grand piano would greet her, its lid raised like an ebony sail. A panel of judges with their clipboards and cool professional smiles. A clock on a wall. Only the details varied. The color of the judge's clothing, the piece she had picked to play. 15 years was a long time. So was 7 minutes. She raised her eyes to scan the hallway. A styrofoam cup abandoned next to a wastebasket cast a shadow like a misshapen halo on the blackened planks of the hardwood floor. She couldn't help wincing. What pianist would bring coffee to an audition? You needed to be quiet inside, not revved up. She was already revved up enough with an excitement bordering on panic. An elevator pinged in the distance. There was the clang of a radiator, and then the hallway was silent. She looked at her hands again, the ridge of her knuckles, the thin gold band, the blue veins just below the surface, like a road to somewhere or to nowhere. That was always a possibility. Vera had been confident that the solo was hers if she wanted it, but Vera was like that, arrogant and imperious. Susanna knew, and she knew Vera did too, that there weren't any guarantees in the music world, no matter who you were or what famous teacher had recommended you. Susanna Lewis, a tall man with a neatly trimmed beard, opened the door and squinted at her over the top of his glasses. She sprang to her feet. Yes, here. Her voice caught, eager and high-pitched. Good Lord, she sounded like a schoolgirl instead of a woman nearing 40. You're on in 5 minutes, he told her. Yes, thank you. She had told herself, getting dressed and heading into Manhattan, that this was simply a job, a nice return to the professional stage after 15 years of safe little programs at churches and schools. But there was something else, and that something else was the reason her heart was beating such a crazy staccato. The rapture. She'd lost it, somewhere between teaching and giving workshops and making sure that everyone's life was running smoothly. It wasn't Aaron's fault, maybe it wasn't even her fault, but the magic was gone and she wanted it back.
That was wonderful. That was completely wonderful. So let's talk about. I mean, I wanted to go into a question about Susanna, but after that reading, I want to ask you about the magic. You know, the magic in your own work. What is your writing life like, and how do you cultivate that magic for yourself?
Oh, I love that question, Caroline. Because it's because like all these people have all these like templates and story beats and this and that you're supposed to do. And that is not what works for me. I've been thinking about this a lot lately because in this pandemic, I've been really secluded. And so like my story world is much more interesting than my actual life these days. So I really feel though that you get into this, I'm calling it the zone of enchantment, where you're just feeling the emergence of this story that needs you to tell it. And it's you have to really just serve it as well as you can. And it's a kind of marriage between the subconscious and the conscious mind, because the conscious mind knows how to write nice sentences, you know, and there's something about a kind of stillness that allows those two minds to connect. And that for me is this immersive, unbelievable experience that I love so much.
It is an unbelievable experience. It's really hard to describe it, but it's absolutely amazing. Oh, you have a question already. I was going to ask you a question, but let's let the audience ask it. Okay. The arts clearly play a big role in your writing. The first book was framed by George O'Keeffe's work, and this one is about music. Can you say a little bit about why and how you began to marry the arts and writing? Good question. Thank you.
It's a great question. And thank you, Rashika. Well, of course, the real answer is I have no idea. But, but the O'Keeffe it had talk about haunted. A couple of her paintings had in fact haunted me for years. And I hadn't seen them in person until later that's another story. When I began working on the book, I actually went to see these paintings, which I had only seen in reproduction. So it just it just spoke to me in some way, something very profound about being a woman, beauty, mystery. And so I learned about O'Keeffe while I was writing the book, actually. Now, this one has a whole different story. This is like a secret that I wrote this one first, and I was going to publish it first, but
Oh,
it wasn't good enough. I pulled it. It just what I knew it wasn't right, and I was like completely lost. I ended up then writing Queen of the Owls in a fairly short time, and then later I went back to this, and what I learned was that it wasn't just that I had to become a better writer, which I did. I had to become a better musician before I could write this book.
that's
And
interesting.
and I had gone back to studying piano after many years away, and I had a like nice teacher. And then I ended up I took a leap to a much more high level teacher, I would say, and he's amazing. And and I had to understand something more deeply about music before I could make Susanna who she needed to be. She was really kind of snarky in the early versions. She was bitter. She had like a chip on her shoulder. It was like completely wrong. You can't play music if you're negative in the slightest.
Right.
You have to be completely open, completely giving and receptive both, you know. So this book had to wait, but I do study piano. I am like, you know, nowhere near the level, but this is a story I told Caroline that I felt like I owed it to Susanna to learn part of her sonata before publication date. So typically in sonatas, the second movement is the slow movement. It's very contemplative, it's very transcendent, very heartbreaking. Oh, something, I don't know, somebody's calling me, probably one of my horrible children. I'll just, I told them, I said, don't call me, I'm doing my book launch. Oh, oh well, just going to like, I tell
That
them,
makes you human.
they don't listen. You know, all these years, I text them, they still don't listen. Oh good, he just remembered the call got disconnected. Anyway, and Sushi, I see you up there. You actually know my son, so she knows exactly. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, so I made it I said I got to learn the second movement. I love this so much. We worked and I can actually say I can play it not shabbily. So like that was very cool. So but to the bigger question you asked, Rajika, is I do think there's something art can teach us because it's not just of the cerebral mind. Art speaks to feeling, to spirit, to body. So I really think art can be a portal.
Mhm. Don't you think though that if you're doing one creative thing, you're usually doing something else creative? I know a lot of writers who are also painters or musicians, and it's always like one thing that you do not as well as you do the other thing, but it's important to do that because it does open you up, right?
Oh, totally. I feel like you need another vehicle that's not about words.
Yes.
And
Yes.
in fact, my mentor is an amateur painter, my writing mentor. She's like an amazing writer, but I really think you need to get out of that word making part. It's actually when you get out of the word making part that you're opened up enough to know what the next words are going to be, right? If you just like
Right.
hyper focus on words,
Right.
you're not going to have the light in them. But so Carolyn, what is your secret other thing that you do?
I paint. I paint. I was actually pretty good when I was in high school. I got a special scholarship to take classes for high school students, but I was the worst one there. And it got to the point where I thought, well, I can focus on writing or I can focus on painting. And what I loved is what you were talking about, that magic feeling where you're so addicted and so immersed in this other world. I couldn't give that up. I
I
couldn't
know
give
it's
that
great,
up.
but we do need to get out of that world in order to kind of like
Yes.
give it a little breath, give it time to breathe, you know?
Right,
Um,
right. You have more questions from the audience.
okay.
Oh, I should tell the people's name who asked a question. Gail Priest asks, Barbara, I'm glad you read that opening audition tonight because it stayed with me after reading the novel. You put the reader through that audition. I'm wondering if you've ever auditioned. My other question is about Vera. Is she based on a teacher you knew?
Okay, these are great questions.
They
Well, now,
are great questions.
Gail had actually read an arc. She's like one of my beloved team members. So what oh no, I have never auditioned, but I have played in front of others, and it's a struggle because you have to put the music first. The minute you start worrying about what they're thinking of you, the music disappears. So to that degree, I can relate to that. And there's a couple of things in the book where she talks about, well, I can say what I had, you can't just be looking at the notes like you're going to be like a typist, like typing the notes.
Mm-hmm.
It's the music behind the notes. So that's my own experience. And Vera, to a degree, reminds me of my writing mentor, Sandra Schofield, who's like a tough love, like, like take no prisoners kind of, who also wants me to, she wants me to be the best I can be. And that's what
Mm-hmm.
Vera is for Susanna. And so you want a teacher who'll say that's not good enough.
I wanted to ask you too. I wrote something down that auditioning, isn't that sort of the same feeling for a writer? Because in a way, like you're putting yourself in the work and then you're sort of waiting for the response from reviewers and people. And it's the same sort of thing when you said you can't start worrying about what people are going to think about you. You have to think about the work instead and to just do the
Hard,
best that you can.
hard.
And that's hard. That's hard. Okay, Julie Ryan McGoo asked,
Really hard.
where did some of your plot inspiration originate?
Well, there's lots of strands in the book. There's lots of themes. One of them is that the protagonist is adopted, and I am a mother by adoption. So I have been close to that world. And although it's nothing biographical or autobiographical
Mhm.
in that at all, actually the Texas characters, her biological, they just appeared to me. I don't know where they came from. I just knew these people. And like, I'm an urban New Yorker. Like, where do I don't know how I knew them, but I just knew them. They just came. Some of the other strands, they kind of, the way I work, this is very generic, but I kind of know where I want to go, but it
Mhm.
opens in the middle. Yeah, I'm sure you can relate to this, Carolyn. As you're working, the middle starts opening for you. So you
Yeah,
don't know where you don't know. They come in the shower. They come, they just come when they come.
I know it's mysterious. Are you somebody had asked a question earlier that I wanted to ask you, and I can't find her name, so I apologize. It was she asked if you were addicted to writing the way many writers are. I think that's a wonderful question because I would say
I
I
am.
am.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I am. I really am. I'm really, um, I've always written. I wrote my first book when I was 7 years old.
Oh, do you have
It was called At Home with Us. It was fully illustrated. Someday it'll be worth like $1 million, hardly. But anyway, and I've written, but there were long periods when I wrote nonfiction. I actually write nonfiction as well now.
Okay.
I write blogs and stuff about the writing life. So it's just always been a part of me. Yeah.
Okay, you have so many questions. This is
Oh,
so
good. This is
wonderful.
more fun that way.
Okay, Sharon wants to ask, what's your third book about? Can you talk
Oh,
about it?
Sharon, you sneaky devil, you. Well, I will just say that and Maggie, I see Maggie, she knows, she has an insider track, that the art form in that one is glass blowing. So come back next year and we'll talk.
Okay, Evelyn is asking, was the
Evelyn.
Schubert piece an important starting point for you, or did you have to search for a piece to fit the narrative? Great question.
And actually, Evelyn, I've known for a long, long time. It's great we kind of reconnected. I had actually heard that because I had a recording of my teacher playing it. And I loved it so much. And I said, oh, I'll never be able to play anything that beautiful. So that's where that came from, actually. And then I heard Leon Fleischer play it, and it just touched me so deeply.
Okay, we've got a question from Julie Maloney. If you could come back in the afterlife as another human, would you choose to be a painter or a musician for your profession? That's interesting. It's a
Oh
great
my
question.
goodness. Well, probably I would come back exactly as I am now, whether I want to or not. But um, my first career aspiration was to be an astronomer. So perhaps that's what it would end up being. Who knows?
That's so interesting. Okay, I have a question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
Your book is about the progressive, it's also about the progressive hereditary disease that your character Susanna has that robs her of her music ability, except for a concert. But what fascinated me so much was that the disease is almost a metaphor for the birth family that also took so much away from her and never made her feel that she belonged. I mean, was this, I'm thinking of another question as I'm telling you this one. Was this deliberate? I mean, which came first, the birth family or the progressive disease? And how did you know how to connect them? And my second question is, what was the research for this like?
Okay, I'm going to try to hold all your questions because they're great. So, like with the first version of this book, like totally sucked. It was no good because I had these different things and they didn't work together, right? So one of the things I needed to do when I went back for draft number 2 was figure out what was the connection between she wants to be this pianist. She wants, as a pianist, she wants to be chosen.
Mhm.
As an adopted child, she was not chosen, and her adoptive mother told her this story about the chosen baby, which stuck in her craw because it was just a way of making her own wound, making it pretty to
That's
make everybody
terrible.
happy. Okay, so this notion of being chosen. So she wants to play the piano and redeem herself. And then I had this adoption strand. I had this idea of a disease. So okay, so I had to find a disease that was hereditary because it connected her to
Mhm.
her biology and that would affect her as a pianist. So I was sitting on the train going into Manhattan one day and I Google hereditary disease of the fingers. And like we love Google because it comes up with an answer. It comes up Dupuytren's contracture. So it was like totally perfect. And I started researching it. And here's one of to connect your other question, one of the amazing things I found. So then I Googled pianist Dupuytren's. Wouldn't you know, there's a world famous pianist named Misha Dichter who had Dupuytren's and had a treatment and went back to making these incredible recordings. I think he's very famous for Liszt. I don't remember now. So being me, I write to him or to his agent, and I said, I want to write a book about a pianist who has Dupuytren's contracture. Do you think I could ask Mr. Dichter a few questions? And he's like one of the most incredible pianists in the world. So I'm sitting at my desk, and the phone rings. Hello, this is Misha Dichter. He was
Oh,
so gracious. He was just, you know this, Carolyn, when you set out to research, you're just a pipsqueak and you write to some like famous person and they are generous
they are
because they're
amazing,
so
amazing,
happy.
amazing.
Yeah, and this happened to me when I was a professor, a researcher as well. So he was lovely. And so I learned a lot. And then I came to find out that, in fact, I learned a lot more about Dupuytren's, let's just say, but it was really, he really brought that together and let me know that what I wanted to do was quite credible. It wasn't like, far-fetched.
That is, yeah, sometimes research can open up plot, and you always hope you're not going to get somebody who's going to tell you that will never work because then your story just sort of dissipates. We have a question from Sushila. Have the conditions of the pandemic affected your writing? How you develop your themes and characters?
Yeah, it's really a strange thing, isn't it? I mean, um, when our lives are so much more contained, not much coming in from the outside in a way. it gives space for writing. So the fact is that I did not write this book during the.
Oh no, you froze. Whoops, hold on everybody, we're trying to get Barbara back. Okay, she's frozen. All right, then I'm going to talk more about Barbara's book until she comes back. I don't know how she would.
Caroline, do you have her phone number by any chance? Can you text her?
No, I
She
don't
might
have
not
her
be
phone
aware.
number. I just have her email.
Okay, I'll email her.
Okay.
Talk
Okay,
about the book, I'll email her.
I will talk more about her book. I wanted to talk to her about the title, The Sound Between the Notes, because I thought that's such a beautiful title. And earlier, before she got on, we were both talking about what makes a reader look at a book. And we both thought that it was definitely the cover. That readers sometimes don't care what kind of blurbs you have on there, or sometimes they feel like, well, it's just your friends, or it's someone your publisher got you, or readers don't really care about reviews that much. They care about the plots, and they care about what a cover says to you. And I was going to talk to Barbara about what two beautiful covers she has. I know from experience also that there are certain colors that work better with certain books. I've been told that sci-fi books always have blue covers, for example. So I was going to ask Barbara about her title, and I can't answer for her. I was also going to ask her about her process, if it had changed very much, because to me, every book is different. And every time I sit down to write another book, I always feel like, well, I have writer's amnesia because I don't remember how to write, and it takes a while to get back into it. So I want to say again to encourage everybody to please order books from Shakespeare Company. And Barbara and I have said that if you buy her book, or if you buy any of my books or any of her books, just shoot me a copy of the transcription of the receipt. You can fold it over so we don't see your credit card number, and we will get you some goodies, which include pages that didn't make it into the book, book plates, and I think in Barbara's case, it was also a book. So I don't know if Barbara's going to, oh yeah, thank you, Francoise, for putting. Do I think it's important that the covers of my books all have a similar look? You know, I don't know the answer to this. I've found that book covers are really branding. With Algonquin, they've started to, they wanted to put out my paperback the same time as my hardback, and they wanted the books to look alike, so it would stick in people's memory.
Sorry, I'm back.
Oh, you're back. Oh, excellent, excellent. Okay.
Thank you for waiting. Thank you for, no, this is like my laptop had gotten unplugged somehow, and it, oh. You all for, I couldn't believe it. Was like, oh no. But it just is okay.
Okay, great. Well, I talked about your book a bit. I talked about the questions I was going to ask you, and this one I really do want to know, which is, this is your second book, and I was wondering if your process changed since then, because I personally always feel like I have writer's amnesia. I don't remember how to do it.
But Caroline, before I answer, I'm going to go back to the question I was going to answer about the pandemic.
Right. I forgot about that. Okay, yes.
Example, because the unexpected happens. And what the pandemic taught us is we have to pivot, and we just have to like not freak out. So thank you all for bearing with the fact that, I don't know, my thing got unplugged, something went weird with the battery. Anyway, thank you very, very much for hanging in there. Anyway, going back to your question about writing, did the process change with one book to the other, you're saying, Caroline? Mm-hmm. Well, yes, because this book went through many, many changes. Queen of the Owls came out as a kind of whole. I don't know what it was. This is a more complicated book. It is dual timeline. It originally had 3 timelines, which was absurd. I had to get rid of that other one. I had to get rid of like the dog, like I loved her dog when but that just didn't work. Get rid of the child, you know. So I had to really, I think I tried something that was too hard for me at first. To start your first book with 3 different timelines. No. So right. So I went, by the time I went back to it, I made it was simplified into 2, and they had to then come together in a very organic way. And so this just was a very, much more challenging, many more characters in a way. So I think every book has its own life, its own journey, right?
Right. There's sort of riffing off that. There's a great question from Joan Fernandez. She said it's about your development and progress as a writer over time and practice. What are you able to do now as a writer besides your 3 timelines that you couldn't have done before? Also, how has your nonfiction writing helped your fiction?
Oh, these are great. These are like, you guys are like the best audience ever. So let's see. And you also do these double-barreled questions, which would. So the big thing I think I can do now, Joan, is I can keep it clean, keep it simple. I used to feel I had to say everything twice or 3 times, and like purple, over. I think I'm not afraid of being very simple and direct now, and that especially in this 3rd book I'm working on, it's the cleanest writing I've ever done. So in a way, you learn to do less. The nonfiction part is very interesting because when you set out to write a blog about something, you kind of realize what you know. You have to take what you do perhaps more intuitively and translate it into something a little more cerebral and, kind of, other people would understand. And it's very interesting. It shows you what you understand and what you don't.
What you don't, right. Okay, last question is from Evelyn Latour. Isn't it difficult bringing out a new book while publicizing a book out just a year before? Or do the 2 books help sell one another? That's a great question.
It's insane. And so also getting back, like I didn't write either of these during the pandemic, but trying to promote, it's really, the part of oneself that writes and the part of oneself that has to sell are very different. And I can do both, but they're very different, and they really have a different energy. And yeah, it's tiring. It's quite tiring. And you keep this up so amazingly, Caroline. You're like, you just make me look low key sometimes, which is hard to do.
That's being neurotic. That's OCD. That's not necessarily a good thing.
Well, but I mean, you have to be high energy.
Yeah.
It's very interesting because, as you know, Caroline, when you write, you're very interior.
Mm-hmm.
You're very, but to talk about your writing, you kind of like all the energy's going out.
Right, that's
And
right.
you have to toggle both. And it's quite interesting. In a way, it's not as hard as one might think, because if you're passionate about what you've written.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just a different mindset, because most writers are used to being introverts and staying inside, and we can't do that anymore. We have to just sort of go out and talk to people, which can be great. So I wanted to first and foremost thank Francois for having us at this wonderful bookstore, Shakespeare Company. Next, I wanted to thank Barbara for being my friend and for being such a great writer and such a fun conversation partner. This is great. This is great. And I want to thank all of you for being here. And I wanted to remind you, I feel like a used car salesman, so forgive me. But please, please buy your books from Shakespeare Company, and Barbara and I will send you goodies if you send your receipt to me. And thank you all for being here.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for staying, even though I just.
And I want to thank both of you. Thank you, Caroline. You've been a very wonderful conversation partner and a pro. Someone is just coming in. You've been and a real pro. I mean, we're completely unfazed by Barbara's sudden disappearance. That was wonderful. Caroline's last book is With or Without You. Oops, here we go. And you can get it from Shakespeare Co. I
Please.
given you the link more than once. And here is the sound between
you
the
got
notes
it.
from Barbara. Today is her book launch, so congratulations. If you want to unmute right now and applaud her, I think this is a good time to do it.
I can never do the heart, right? Here it
Oh
is.
yeah, no, but thank you all so much that for just like, in a way, this is life, isn't it? Just like
Yeah.
the stuff happens and you just got to pick yourself up and get back on the Zoom call and trust that life will still be there when you return.
And make it happen.
Thank you to everybody. It's just been super fun. And friends, and I really want to say it is just so important to keep these great bookstores alive for us.
Yes.
So important. So thank you.
Thank you again, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Good night. Congratulations,
night.
Barbara. It's a great book.
Congratulations, Barbara.
And I hope to talk to you soon. Good night.